Good morning, everyone. I must say you all are a very impressive group. It's good to see you all, and thank you for joining us this morning. So whether you're joining us from Kansas City or virtually, I want to welcome you all to the Technology Trends in Insurance Industry. I am Karima Woods. I'm the Commissioner for the DC Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking. I also serve as co-vice chair of NIC's Innovation, Cybersecurity, and Technology Committee. I'm proud to serve under the leadership of Mayor Muriel Bowser, whose administration continues to champion digital equity and access across the District of Columbia. We're gathered here today at a moment of profound transformation. We just heard from our keynote speaker, who I think brilliantly kind of laid out where we are right now as it relates to technology, innovation, but more importantly, leadership. Technology is not just influencing the insurance industry, it's redefining it. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, and other emerging tools are reshaping how we assess risk, engage consumers, and deliver services. These innovations promise greater efficiency, personalization, and reach. But they also raise some very complex questions that regulators, technologists, and insurers must confront together. So today we're going to unpack some of these questions. We're going to ask hard questions like which innovations are genuinely improving how insurance is delivered. How are professionals adapting their skills, mindsets, and organizations to keep pace? How can technology expand access to insurance, especially for underrepresented communities, without compromising trust, transparency, and human touch? And as we evaluate emerging trends, how do we distinguish between what's transformative, what's overhyped, and yes, there's a lot of overhype out there, and what's quietly reshaping the industry beneath the radar? So today's panel is designed to explore those questions from multiple vantage points. We'll hear from leaders who are shaping the future of insurance through technology, each bringing a unique lens of InsurTech, from the InsurTech, global carriers, and also healthcare providers. To begin, I've asked our panelists to introduce themselves and share a personal insight into how technology has impacted them, whether it's a breakthrough, a challenge, or a vision for what's next. So please join me in welcoming our panelists, Scott Fisher from Lemonade, Jennifer Hobbs from Zurich North America, and Rob Suarez, who is on his way from CareFirst. We'll leave time at the end for questions, so I do encourage you to listen actively, think critically, but more importantly, to write down your questions. We'll have a microphone that we'll be passing around that you can come and ask those questions. So this is not just a conversation about technology, it's a conversation about leadership, responsibility, and the future of financial protection. So if you all are ready, we can dive right on in. Thank you again, panelists, for joining us. If you would please just introduce yourselves and share a little bit about your personal experience with technology. And Jennifer, you're immediately to my left, so we'll go ahead and start with you if that's okay.
So I'm Jennifer Hobbs. VP of Data and Analytics at Zurich North America. My background is actually not in the insurance space initially. I did my PhD in physics at Northwestern, and I was studying computational neuroscience, so how rats differentiate touch with their whiskers. And so a long way away from working in the commercial industry space. But that's what got me involved in computer vision and machine learning, truly kind of back before it was cool. And then I decided to leave academia, and actually Zurich was the first place that I came out of my PhD. I was there and then took sort of a detour into other areas of tech, sports technology, and most recently agriculture technology, and then had the opportunity to return to Zurich about 3 years ago. And so there I lead several of our AI teams working in insight generation, our document intelligence suite, and then I also am very involved in our AI governance efforts and responsible AI usage. And so I guess, I don't know, it'd be hard for me to pick an anecdote. It's sort of been, there throughout my career, but I think for me, it's really seeing the evolution of the techniques involved, but also, I approach these things often looking at the skill sets and how to train individuals, whether it was at the university or now. I think mentorship training, skill development is really important to me, and so seeing how we build those skills in the practitioners as well as people who are using the technology has always been very interesting in seeing how that landscape evolves.
Sorry. Good morning. Scott Fisher. I'm the General Counsel and Head of Government Relations for Lemonade Insurance. Two things. First of all, I would just rather hear about the whiskers and the rats. I think everybody else here probably feels the same way. But for purposes of our, continuing education, we'll talk about insurance. So I am not a PhD whatsoever. I have a law degree. I've been at Lemonade for about 3 years and came to that after several years being among you all. I was at the New York Department of Financial Services. I was the executive deputy superintendent for insurance. Came to Lemonade partially because one of the things that I had the opportunity to do when I was at DFS was to give Lemonade a license, and for my sins, I ended up back with them. Speaking of which, I will just give the normal health warning. I'm here. We are a public company, and I will say on behalf of Jennifer too, anything we say is in our personal capacity, not representative of our companies. That said, I think the big difference that I've experienced, I think tech, one of the things that it's both a blessing and a curse is the way that it has allowed us to move out of the office or be more remote. Once upon a time, when I started out as a baby lawyer, the height of technology, well, we worked endless hours, but we was always in the office because you had to be in the office. There was no way to not be in the office. And the height of technology was literally a room, I don't know how big it was, but it felt big. It was filled with fax machines. And that was the height of technology, that you would do markups of documents and send them off to the other side, and it was these constant fax machines. And so I think the thing, and perhaps it's not apocryphal, but hopefully, metaphorical, right, is the fact that although tech has incredible opportunities, for all sorts of areas, one of the areas is actually even though we're tethered to our phones, we can explore life outside of the office, so that it gives us a lot more opportunity to do things that we would otherwise not be able to do if back like in the 80s and 90s, I didn't work in the 80s, I wasn't a lawyer in the 80s, I'm not that old, but in the 90s, that you were stuck sort of where you are. And this now, and I think it goes toward what we'll ultimately talk about, is the access to insurance, is being able to get, technology allowing access to people and to groups of people and to all sorts of things that weren't necessarily thought of before, or we didn't have access to before, because it had to be at an office, or it had to be somewhere that was not very convenient for people who, who work for a living, who can't go and take off time in the middle of the day to go meet with their insurance agent to get what they need.
Thank you both. And as I mentioned, our other panelist is on his way. When he comes, I'll have him introduce himself as well. Scott, I want to expand upon a point that you made around technology and how it has shifted the way in which we work, where we work, how we work. It seems like every day we are reading a new headline about what the public can do with a new piece of technology, whether it's generative AI, agentic AI, or something else. Technology trends continue to drive much of the public discourse these days. So with that in mind, if you can, Scott, just expand upon what's one tech trend in insurance that you're most excited about right now, and why?
Sorry. Sure. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Whether it's generative AI or agentic AI, I think that is the next. It's not just in insurance; it's everywhere, but certainly in insurance, that's that's where we are, that's where we will be going. The fact of the matter is what we are now able to do, or what companies are able to do and should be able to do, is to alleviate or eliminate a lot of cost, a lot of friction for the customer that used to exist or that exists today, and that hopefully will go away in all kinds of things. Whether it's getting a policy at the outset, or whether it's providing a first notice of loss or dealing with a claim, things that are high friction, high touch right now don't need to be. What do I mean by when I say that? So at this point now, today or previously, you would file your claim and you'd give it to a human agent, and then there would be sort of an effort undertaken to look at the claim and figure out how you want to handle the claim and interact with the customer, do all these sorts of things that are necessary and are very time consuming and are very human focused. Now, what generative AI can do is to simply be able to do all those things that the human was doing, and can do it a lot faster and potentially more accurately. That is, getting the first notice of loss, looking at what it is, figuring out what the plan is for the claim. What kind of claim is it? Who should it go to? What are the pieces of paper that the insurance company needs in order to process these claims? All things that are rote for an insurance adjuster as today, but right now are being done by human beings. Can be done by AI at this right now. And what agentic AI will do, the next generation, which is not that far away, will be to actually go and get it. Right? So it's one thing for the generative AI to be able to literally talk to the consumer and say, I need the police report, just to make something up, right? The next step, I don't know, that maybe this is a little farther away. I need the body shop estimate, right? The next step would be that the bot, for lack of a better word, can actually go get the estimate from the company, from the body shop, that we are that interconnected that you can have the machines go and get these bits of information. We're not there yet, but where we are is having the ability to have the machine recognize what kind of claim it is, what sorts of information it's going to need to process the claim, and then specifically ask the customer for that sort of information, all of which will then free up claims adjusters, human beings who are going to make the really tough decisions, have much more time and focus on making those tough decisions.
Jennifer, do you want to address that question? Is there a tech trend that you're most excited about?
Yes, so first I'll say I don't know that we're that far off to fetching information from different sources. A lot of it has always gone back to having your data organized in a way that it can speak to multiple systems, but the advances within agentic AI are really enabling us to connect a lot of these different systems. I think that's actually I certainly, in many regards, often take an internal, look at how some of these are impacting our businesses, where a lot of development time was spent to do some of this connection. There's still a huge amount of infrastructure and data work that is needed to make generative and AI and agentic AI work well. But a lot of the pain in translating languages across systems to build these things to enable the technology, now that build out actually for companies is becoming much easier. So I think the adoption, will speed up. And to that end, too, I think whereas maybe in the last phase of AI, or certainly I think as more advanced machine learning first started to roll out, it was largely being done by the bigger companies. You needed a lot of data, a big team of experts, domain experts who could advise the data science team on how to build everything, and not every company had data scientists. And so it was really sort of located in some of the larger players. But with these new models that are out there, there's a lot of tools that are already built, or really out of the box gets you more than, oh, this is cute, this is fun to play around with, but actually delivers value to it. Maybe you can't do the customization that a large company can, but it is really putting some of this very powerful technology in everybody's hands. And I think that, whatever that technology is, whether it's generative or agentic, is what I think is different this time around than it was in the wave that was, maybe 10 years ago.
Thank you. Before we jump into our next question, I do want to give our panelist, Rob Suarez, thank you for joining us, an opportunity to just share a little bit about your personal experience with technology and also to introduce yourself.
Karima, thank you. Karima, thank you so much for that introduction, and I'll spare all of you my travel woes, but I do plan on researching travel insurance after this conference.
Oh boy, oh boy.
Good morning, everyone. So I am so delighted to be here with all of you. As Karima mentioned, my name is Rob Suarez, and I am the Chief Information Security Officer for CareFirst Blue Cross Blue Shield. That is a healthcare plan serving Maryland, DC, Northern Virginia, and increasingly playing a role in the delivery of healthcare as well. I've been working in cybersecurity for the past 15 years, and for most of my career, though, involved in software and technology pertaining to healthcare. I was formerly the CISO of a Chief Information Security Officer for a company called Becton Dickinson. And that is over 90% of the world's needles and syringes come from that one company. But also increasingly utilizing software-enabled medical technology to drive better outcomes for patients. So it's an honor to be here with all of you.
Thank you, Rob. So we've talked a little bit about AI, and when we talk about AI or other technologies, we often need to approach these discussions with a sense of curiosity as we explore new possibilities. And so, Rob, we can start with you, and then others feel free to jump in as you see fit. So what's one unexpected way AI has impacted your business?
Sure. One of probably the most unexpected ways that AI has impacted the business at CareFirst is a 400% increase in our ability to process claims. With over 96% accuracy, we are seeing many benefits to supporting our customer service agents, giving them a personalized chatbot that's enabled by AI to help provide a better experience for members that are calling in and reduce those wait times. I think that was surprising. I will be even more surprised when I start to see AI drive better outcomes for patients. And I think at the end of the day, what would be most exciting for me is not if an organization is able to process claims faster, but rather to produce better outcomes for people every single day in need of healthcare. That's the form of insurance I work in, and for me, it's not about claims. It's about the people at the end of everything that we do, and those are patients at the most vulnerable times of their life. I think the other part probably that's very surprising to see how artificial intelligence is increasingly becoming a means for better protecting organizations. So let me be clear, there's tons of risk, unknown risk with artificial intelligence. And from a cybersecurity standpoint, what used to take hours now takes minutes to exfiltrate sensitive information. That is one of the greatest risks that artificial intelligence poses, aside from impersonation. There's also the application of AI in cybersecurity controls in our defenses, and it's the best way that we can match the pace of new and emerging threats that are AI enabled.
Absolutely, and thank you for bringing up risk and also for emphasizing the human aspect with the outcome that you shared. Does anyone else want to address that question?
Sure. This building off of sort of my last answer, I think the other thing that's really interesting about this wave of AI, again, we talk about generative AI and agentic AI, and that's what most people, when you're interacting with, that's the cool bit to it, is that it's talking to me in language that I understand. Again, as the technical practitioner side of it, I actually think the thing that's maybe most impressive is, we also call these foundational models. These models that are being put out by, OpenAI or, Perplexity or whomever, is generating these models. they are so good across every domain. Before when we'd go to start a new project, somebody would come to me and say, I want a model that does X. When can you build it in? And I say, well, where's the data? What data do we have? There's a certain amount of time to get to the data, annotate the data. We got to try, and then you spend all this time building it, and you go, the results are around 70%. 70% good enough? Yes, no. Okay, well then let's go get some more data, and that process would continue. So it could be 6+ months before I could even say this is a viable product, because we spent so much time trying to collect labels, clean the data. Now these models off the shelf, they're really good, and you could start building and put something more than a prototype, more than a demo, something that's actually working in the hands of again maybe an executive steering committee who's making a decision about whether we want to roll this out in weeks, not months. And so, in addition to making it accessible to a wider range of organizations within any given organization, my idea to go from, well, it would be cool if we could do, to this is what it might look like, is so much, on a shorter time scale than it was before. And so that's really allowing this ability to innovate, to go much more quickly. And it's also allowing more people to be involved in the build process than was before. When the AI boom hit about 10 years ago, there was this push to go out and get people with PhDs in a variety of STEM fields, because we need people who know this math, and bring them in and have them. And now, we're seeing the ability to, again, if you're taking an off-the-shelf model, it looks less like statistics and more like software engineering. And so the number of people who are able to be involved in the build process is much larger. And so I think that has, a variety of impacts across the business in terms of maybe rolling out tools to smaller lines of business that may have made lower priority in the past, because there's a huge amount of reusability and the speed to development is much, much quicker.
Yeah, I think as the non-technologist, I think that what it comes down to is exactly that. It's the fact that was surprising to a person like me, like most regulars, is the speed, the way in which it feeds on itself, so that you can actually start, I think, I forget what we call it, a lemonade, but you can actually have the AI starting to write the code. So you no longer need the armies of people to do the work. The machines themselves are actually able to help develop the next generation of that. Number one, and number two, and the other side was exactly the question. When I thought about this question, the first thing I came was fraud. Was the way in which that you think, because we're not a bunch of criminals in this room, so you don't think of that as the first thing. But one of the biggest surprises is the way in which we are now forced to use AI or getting impacted by the use of AI by fraudsters to try to make fraudulent claims.
Definitely, and you both brought up important points around speed, efficiency, and more people involved in the build process. And so I want to build upon that a little bit more. When we talk about the impact of technology, oftentimes it can feel a bit obscured. What I mean by that is there's innovation happening, but oftentimes not in a way that consumers can perceive it, or even receive it at times. And so I'm curious to know if you can offer some perspective on how you see technology helping to make insurance more accessible and creating value that consumers can see. And we can go with Scott, Rob, and others jump in as well.
Sure. I think there's probably at least 4 areas that I can think of on access. One would be access to information, access to markets, access to understanding, and ultimately the access to the products. So what do I mean by that? I think the first bit, access to information is it, and I remember we talked about this when InsurTechs first popped up. It was very much about the concern or the issue about disintermediation. And I think that it has happened to some degree, but maybe not as much. But the point is it's, I don't say democratized it, but you just think about the fact that technology now makes it so that the individual consumer can look across 5, 6, 7 different auto insurers or homeowners insurers, or could look at different health insurance companies, life insurance, whatever it is. The fact that that the technology is actually empowering consumers to get better access to what they're looking for because they have a greater ability to get. They're not, certainly nothing wrong with the agent down the street who has a brick and mortar, agency, but it gives a lot more ability for individuals to go find that insurance. Same thing similar with markets. What I think about there is the fact that we all, even those of us with lots of gray hair, still are, because we are now becoming acclimated to the fact that everything is going to get done on our phone, that we have instant access to everything. And people that are much younger than us expect that. And the technology allows us as insurers to provide access to consumers because they are met where they're at, so to speak. So that the consumers, the particularly young ones, are able to interact with insurance in a way that they're much more comfortable with. I think for understanding, my hope would be, quite frankly, that we can use, and I think it's a combination of the regulatory community and the companies themselves, using the technology, particularly AI or particularly large language models, to make insurance much more understandable. I think we would all agree, we all in this room understand why insurance policies look the way they do. We get it. We understand how to read them. I think we would all agree they're not that easy to read. They're not very understandable. And I think one of the things I know one of the things that the technology can do, particularly GLMs or LLMs, is make it more understandable to consumers, that they're gonna be able to get it. And then finally, I think access to the product is just price. Again, not saying anything that I don't think everyone here appreciates, particularly when it comes to what I call retail, like homeowners and car and pet and those sorts of things. Price pretty much drives, if not all of it, certainly a big portion of why consumers make that choice. And the technology absolutely will make things cost less. It's absolutely going to happen because the overhead is going to go down. I mean, the spend right now is enormous to develop these things, but it's going to go down over time, and it's going to make insurance, I believe, more affordable for everyone. So increase the access to consumers.
Excellent. All very good points. Rob, do you want to touch on any of that?
I think Scott raised some excellent points that I was going to mention as well. Just making policies, providing something that can help regular people understand what's in their policies. I had this experience recently where I bought a car online, and I won't advertise for the company, but they've got like this building over here, by the way, with one of the towers with all the cars in it, so you know who I'm talking about. It was remarkable. I think like only one or two parts of the process I really had to interact with the website. I did not have a mobile app for it. It was all through an AI-enabled chatbot that I was text messaging with. And that to me makes me think about what can we do as an insurance industry as well to make it easier for our customers, for our members to interact with us. And I represent health insurance, and in those circumstances, we also have individuals that just can't interact in the various ways that you would think, whether it's text messaging or it's going to a website. And I do think AI is not so much about the technology. It's actually more about the human experience. Let me be clear too, by the way, because we talk a lot, there's a lot of concern around AI. Good news, the humans are still in control. There's still a human at the beginning and at the end of AI right now. And so this is an opportunity for us to figure out what type of value we want to translate to society when we're thinking about AI. And it can't be just about technology. It has to be about the human experience. Maybe the last thing I'll mention, and it is obvious, which is AI is taking away some of the more manual things that we do in our day-to-day. However, there should still always be a human involved in these processes. The reason why I suggest that is because I'm speaking to an audience of insurance professionals, and insurance is very closely tied to a sense of security, well-being, financial security, and that requires a human touch. Oftentimes, it requires a human to be part of that process and make it a more pleasant experience. And so, but the other part is AI is still software, by the way, and software is written by humans, and humans are fallible, and so software will always have flaws in it.
Great, thank you both for the points made. You have something?
Just, yeah, really briefly, I would say, for us, it's an interesting distinction here, I think, between like personal and commercial lines, right? Personal lines are much more geared toward high throughput, often lower touch. Commercial, there's, a much higher touch, element to the entire process. So, for us, a lot of the focus is really around making our people more efficient, not in eliminating what they're having to do, but if I eliminate data entry, can I use that for data analysis? Can I use, if I make taking information out of documents, less painful, more automated, can I free up that time to talk to the customer, exactly right, have that touch point? And I think that's a particularly important piece for us, is really enabling our people to do their job more efficiently so they can turn around and have more of that human element, because it is at the end a very relational business.
And what I'm hearing from all of you is the importance of the human experience on the front end and also on the back end. So thank you. And Rob, I may have to have a side conversation afterwards because I'll be in the market soon, so I may need to find out which dealership you were working with. Needless to say, we're believe it or not, we're having such a phenomenal conversation. Our time is dwindling down, so I may not be able to get to all of our questions, but I'm going to direct this question to you, Jennifer. There's no shortage of buzz around emerging technologies. Some of them are warranted, some of them are a bit overhyped, but would like to know from your perspective, which technologies do you think are getting too much attention and which ones aren't getting the spotlight they deserve?
So I think here, actually, I'm going to kind of build off the last question and say, I think it's less about a piece of technology, whether it's, LLMs, agentic, or anything else out there, and really more about what makes a successful tool. And because we're talking about that human touch, that human element, people see models, they focus on the models. And yes, that's powering the insights behind it. But to make something that's really meaningful, is going to deliver value to your business and to your customers, I think oftentimes the thing we overlook is some of the design element. It's that, human interface part to it, where what is it that the customer needs? It's understanding my policy language and really solving the right problems and how we think about, designing, whether it's on our phone, because that's how the user may interact with it. I think when we get excited about the technology, it's important to not just focus on the AI, because you could have great AI in the back end, but if the rest of the delivery system's not there, we're really not delivering the value that we need. So that's always a recommendation I have to people, is to not cut the design and the human element short, because that is as critical there, I think, to making it effective. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. We're going to move on. I do want to make sure we touch on the leadership side of technology innovation within the insurance industry. And I thought this morning's speaker did a brilliant job of really kind of bringing that element into the conversation. And so I want to talk a little bit about the people side of transformation. As technology reshapes our industry, what skills or mindsets do you think are most valuable for insurance professionals to thrive in this evolving landscape? And I'll direct this question to you, Rob, and also Jennifer.
I really appreciate this question as someone relatively new to the insurance space. The CareFirst actually is the first insurance company I've ever worked for. Prior to that, I was in medical technology and industrial technology. And if I could borrow from my past experience, I think one of the most important things was being willing to fail, and in safe ways. And in technology, it's a process of constant iteration. In fact, also while we're developing it, it's aging. So technology is like the human body. Over time, it develops weaknesses. It develops illness, actually. Those are called, by the way, sometimes software defects and vulnerabilities, by the way. But it's a process of constant iteration and improvement. I think the other part is when we think about technology and the question of, hey, what technologies didn't pan out? What was overhyped? Is AI overhyped? Is blockchain overhyped? You know, it's really about the time, the point in time, if whether or not people have figured out how to utilize this idea, this concept in an effective way. So to be clear, you know, at one time we can look at ancient civilizations that stumbled upon iron ore and they didn't know what to do with it. And they spent hundreds of years trying to figure out, you know, how can they process it and turn it into different types of tools. Technology is the same way. And what one day might be grid, next day will be cloud computing. You know, what one day will be just machine learning will a later day become generative AI. And it's really about time. And so I would say that culture of willingness to fail, I think is very important.
Yeah, certainly the teams that are building it appreciate the willingness to go through that iteration process with them, because it is an iterative process as we you continue to improve things. I think people maybe forget about the early internet and search days and some of the the pre-Google days when there were other web browsers out there, and how painful it was and how a lot of the things that it brought back were not particularly useful. I think because of how good Google even pre this AI LLM boom was, people just expect that information there at their fingertips. And the generative AI out there, that is one of the key things I think it's delivering, is just better search. Help me find things that I'm looking for more efficiently. And that was always a pain point where people know, they can find it on the internet very easily, but maybe finding it in my company's document repository is infinitely harder than that. And that gap was always a pain point. I think this round of generative AI is narrowing that gap, but it's going to take a little bit of time. So, not to expect, Google level results right away. But it's an iterative process. And so, whether it's something you're building internally or looking externally, I think we're going to see this continue to evolve and sort of be on that journey. The other part I would say is, try safely. When you're starting to use these tools, start with answers where you think you know the answer, and you say, basically help me, provide me evidence that I'm thinking about this the right way. For something unrelated to work, I received a very lengthy legal document about financial stuff, and it was 265 pages and I looked through it and went, I think the answer to this is this. None of this applies to me because I don't meet the criteria on the second page, but let me check. And so I used one of these things and through and went, it agreed with me. So I still ran it by my mother, who is an attorney, but before I used her time, I went to something where I could say, can I get a response from GPT that aligns with what my idea is, and provides me evidence so that I can go back and do that check and confirm that, yes, it is sort of the framework that I was thinking of.
Excellent. So we're going to shift a little bit. I know that we're at that 10-minute mark, and I do want to make sure we get audience participation and questions in. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Microphones are being passed. I see a question back there.
Hi, Brian Stevens with the state of Wyoming. When we're talking about AI, when it comes to the claims process, as Scott was saying, we're seeing, 96% accuracy in claims processing. It seems to me, in a rural area like Wyoming, the claims processing is really losing critical thinking and falling back on what works for the majority of people. So how are we working with these language models to help them determine when the usual way of processing these claims isn't going to work when, say, you say, you need to go to one of our contracted body shops, but the nearest one is 250 miles away?
Anyone want to?
I will take that. I think it wasn't me with the 96%. I would never, but that's it's fine. It's fine. I think there's a couple of aspects of it. One would be it's certainly incumbent on the insurance companies, and I think as regulators, to make sure that the insurance companies are, I would say, risk adjusting is the wrong word, but risk calculating or stratifying what they're doing. So one of the things that we do at Lemonade, and I know that we're not unique as much as kind of I wish we were, is assessing what the levels are. So right, so at the first instance, we need to be responsible to make sure that the easiest stuff, right, is the first stuff that comes in that gets taken care of by the AI, by the machines, by the technology. So for a pet claim, that sort of thing, very easy to pay. It's usually the event has already occurred, and it's a reimbursement model. So the idea would be that we would push more on the tech to be able to just sort of make that quicker decision. To your question, understanding, well, yes, the machine is going to tell you you need another body shop, but the nearest one is 200 miles away. That part of it is also an element of the risk. Are we talking about a pet insurance in a rural area or in a city? What should the response of the machine be if we know that there are these geographic differences or geographic issues? So I think the answer is, how do we do that? We're responsible to know what it is that we're trying to get at. We will do it on a risk-adjusted basis, right? So that a third-party BI claim is really going to be the last thing that we're talking about, tech or automating. And that's the kind of thing that I think that you as regulators can expect from your insurance companies, is to assess what it is that they're trying to achieve and making sure that the technology fits into, as Jennifer was saying, I think, that the tech fits what you're trying to do rather than trying to make everything into the whatever is not everything's a nail if you're a hammer, that kind of thing. Trying to make sure that you're using the right tool for the right job.
I would just add, Scott raised a great point, which is what we refer to is categorizing the different types of correspondence that you have. And for lower risk types of correspondence, for example, enrollment, that is, you're going to treat that very different than let's say, prior authorization in health insurance. And I think the other part, though, that this gentleman highlights here is that AI is going to be something that is very localized. It is very specific to a region and community and set of circumstances. I'm curious to see if there ever emerges a global LLM that is knowledgeable and able to create the necessary correlations across such a broad population. The reality is that, at least, and I am not a clinician, by the way, but when we see the needs of the communities that CareFirst serves, for example, it's very different than communities in other parts of the country. And so I do see value in ensuring that when we are using AI, that it is representative of our stakeholders, representative of the individuals that they're intended to serve.
And I'll just add, I think that one of the things you're pointing out is that as you get away from that sort of, the center mass of the distribution, to be real scientific about it, right? As you get into these edge cases, that's where we start to see, whether it's generative AI or, predictive models, maybe not perform quite as anticipated, right? That's always where there's less data, there's less information, and so, the behavior can be less predictable. On the commercial side, right, we have a lot more edge cases, and that's why we think about AI as really supporting the process and not making a decision, be it on claims or on the policy side. Because when, simply when there is less data there, those are the things that require more human touch. And so, I think, as we've said a number of times, having the human in the loop to oversee that final decision and make that recommendation is very critical.
I have to.
Go ahead, Scott.
I'm still a lawyer. I'm still a lawyer at heart. So the one thing that I would really throw in there, and I think is incredibly important, is human in the loop is vital. We all understand it. We understand the necessity for it and the importance of it. But what I would challenge, particularly this group, is to think about having the human in the loop doesn't actually necessarily make it better. And in that respect, I'll take this example. Okay, so if I get an adjuster's license, and Wyoming is not my home state. I get an adjuster's license in Illinois, but I'm able to get it. I don't know if you need it in Wyoming. I'm just going to pretend you do in order to handle a claim. Well, I don't live in Wyoming, but I'm licensed there. There is no way that you're going to tell me that a human being that is sitting in Illinois or New York or Connecticut or California is going to know that the nearest body shop is 200 miles away. So the fact that you have that human in the loop doesn't necessarily make it better. What the AI can actually do is the AI can layer on top of that, the machine itself can be told, you're dealing with a claim from Wyoming. The nearest body, it can be told much, much, much faster than the human that the nearest body shop for this particular customer is 200 miles away. That's the kind of thing that you do need the human in the loop, but I would challenge this entire audience to say that's not always going to get the best result.
Thank you, Scott. Do we have time for a quick question? Here,
I've got one from chat.
sure.
With AI being
from
trained
the
in
chat.
part utilizing social media platforms, some bias exists inherently in the decision-making process for tasks such as underwriting policies. How are unfair and discriminatory underwriting practices potentially executed by AI models being accounted for? And second part, are new regulatory review procedures necessary to address this potential issue?
That's not a quick question. Who wants to tackle that? We may have to have you read it a little bit. Anyone want to tackle that, or you need it? Can you read the first part again, please? Quickly.
Of course. Okay. How are unfair and discriminatory underwriting practices potentially executed by AI models being accounted for?
Unfair or discriminatory underwriting practices, how are they being accounted for?
Feel free.
Sure. So I think actually building off of your last comment, I'll say we've talked a lot about the risks, the negativity of AI. But I will say actually for myself, one of the things when I think about AI and modeling, actually the very positive side of AI is not just that it makes us more efficient. It actually enables us to be better in a lot of ways, right? That's actually, for me, the promise of AI, is that we can get to something that has less bias than the human. Because to your point, we would think human in the loop is great, but we all know we have biases. And if we're building off of data and you have somebody who's not tired because they didn't have travel trouble, and I didn't have trouble, but I'm still tired from traveling in, and they don't have fatigue of processing all of these documents, processing all these claims, all these policy submissions. Maybe we can actually get a better response. And so I think that's actually, maybe I'll end in that sort of, maybe not directly targeting that, but saying, when we build these models correctly, and there are, techniques, we're not going to, go into the techniques here of how you test data sets and models for bias. Like, that exists, we're doing it. There's, that's why you have the technical practitioners that you do building these models, testing for bias, ablating the bias, testing the impact. All of that exists. It's being done. That's sort of the same way a doctor washes their hands before surgery. We have those processes in place. But I'd really sort of encourage people on the positive side, with the combination of AI and the human working together, I think we have the opportunity to offer a better product, a less biased product. Social media is a cesspool. It's not where I would go to for good insurance data, but other places we can build these models that actually offer a better product for everyone going forward.
Thank you, Jennifer. Scott, you look like you want to say something, so.
No, I was just checking.
Okay.
I'm happy to say, I think that my very, very quick answer to an incredibly difficult question is outcomes. Let's look at what the actual results look like looking at the inputs is incredibly important, but really the answer is it's the same way that you do it today, whether it's AI or not AI. You're going to look at the outcomes. Are these outcomes, do they result in unfairly discriminatory underwriting? Do they result in unfairly discriminatory pricing? That's how we do it today. I don't think that the fact that the technology is driving the underwriting or the pricing changes that calculus.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you to all of our panelists. Please join me. Absolutely. They did a phenomenal job, and I thank you for the insights and learnings that you shared with us today. Also want to give a special shout out to Miguel Romero, NIC's Director of Property and Casualty Regulatory Services, for helping to plan this breakout session. I just want to encourage all of you to carry the momentum forward, not just as professionals, but as stewards of the future where technology serves people. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the summit.